The table is set within the unfolding story of covenant fulfillment. When the Lord took bread and the cup on the night he was betrayed, he was not instituting a recurring ritual to maintain standing before God, but revealing the meaning of his impending death within the language of Israel's story. The meal was rooted in Passover, the remembrance of deliverance from Egypt, yet it pointed forward to a greater exodus, one not from a physical land, but from the bondage of sin and the administration of the law that stood against the people. This is my body. This is my blood of the covenant. These words were spoken in anticipation of a completed work. The bread and the cup were signs, not of something ongoing that must be repeated for efficacy, but of something about to be accomplished once for all. The covenant he spoke of was not a renewal of the old arrangement, but the inauguration of a new one, established entirely by his own sacrifice. The breaking of the bread speaks of the body given, offered willingly, not as a continuation of temple sacrifices, but as their fulfillment and conclusion. The cup, identified with his blood, declares the ratification of the new covenant, echoing the language of Moses when the first covenant was established, yet surpassing it entirely. Where the blood of animals could never take away sin, his blood secured what those sacrifices only anticipated. When he said, "Do this in remembrance of me," the remembrance was not merely mental recollection, but a covenantal acknowledgement. It was a recognition that the anticipated redemption was now present and unfolding. The early gatherings that followed his resurrection and ascension partook of this meal as a declaration that the transition from the old order to the new had been set in motion and would soon reach its consummation. Paul's words to the Corinthians reflect this same reality. You proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. The proclamation was tied to a specific horizon. It looked to the completion of all that his death secured, the full realization of the new covenant age. The coming in view was not an indefinite future expectation, but the climactic arrival of covenant fulfillment, when the old system would finally pass away and the new would stand fully revealed. Thus, the Lord's Supper belongs to that transitional period, a sign given to a people living between promise and fulfillment. It testified that the sacrifice had been made, that the covenant had been established, and that the consummation was near. It was never presented as a means of obtaining forgiveness, nor as a mechanism by which grace is dispensed in portions. Rather, it bore witness to a finished work, complete in itself, lacking nothing. The bread and the cup, then, are inseparable from the declaration. They do not add to that declaration, nor do they sustain it. They simply point to it. In them, the focus is not on human participation as a condition, but on divine accomplishment as a certainty. In this light, the doctrine of the Lord's Supper rests entirely on the sufficiency of Christ's work. It stands as a testimony that the covenant has been fulfilled, that the sacrifice has been accepted, and that nothing remains to be completed. The meal, in its original setting, announced the nearness of that fulfillment and bore witness to its arrival.